Okay, I do believe I've just notified all the fun people. So, hello and welcome to Night Writes. I am Jax Wolff, your host for tonight. If you are just joining us for the first time, hello. How this works will be simple. I have music up and Scrivener, as you can see. Uh, the entire time I'll be either writing or editing. Tonight it will be editing, so you will get to hear the soothing sound of my voice reading parts of my work aloud because I edit aloud. So you get a little bit of a snippet of what I'm working on right now. Hello, pause on the keyboard. It's aka Companion Wolf. I don't know why I said your username first, but hello, and welcome. Um, in terms of as for the rest of you, you can just vibe, chill, bring your own projects, and write alongside. This is definitely a body doubling kind of thing. Uh, in the future we'll have sprints and all kinds of fun things, but it is October, so nobody's doing anything like that. Am I right? There's also an icebreaker. Tonight's icebreaker is what is your go-to Halloween read or watch? Please note the wording. I did not say horror because that is cliche. I mean, whatever media you consume that is of the Halloween slash fall vibe that you watch or read this time of year. It can be horror if you'd like. Uh, but if you're not into horror, you are more than welcome to chime in into the conversation as well. I want you to feel just as welcome and not ignored by the holiday season, as I know that not everybody is into horror, which is valid, completely valid. As for myself, I am very much into all kinds of things, but I do read a lot of horror, a lot of weird esoteric books like House of Leaves, which is perfect for this time of year. I also highly recommend Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. Really, any kind of Grady Hendrix book is an excellent choice for this time of year. He writes a lot of horror that is different from the norm. It's slightly, don't want to say horror comedy, but it's a little bit lighter than slasher stuff and blood and gore, though he does make fun of that as well at times. But yeah, as for you, feel free to take advantage of that icebreaker and pop into chat if you need something to talk about. Alternatively, just talk about whatever you'd like. Talk amongst yourselves, talk about your projects, talk about where you are at the moment. I will see it. I have chat right next to Scrivener, and I will be responding every so often. Uh, if it's just going to be a quiet night, that is also a-okay. No pressure whatsoever to chat. Do whatever you feel like, so long as you guys are chill with each other. Let's see. Pause on the keyboard says, I like to watch one horror movie on Halloween to test my abilities, lol. But I didn't hey which one for this year yet. Maybe Aliens. Aliens is a good choice. Have you seen the first one, Alien? If not, I would also recommend that. Possibly a little bit more. There's just the one infamous scene that is probably a no-go, but other than that, it's all about the tension. Not a lot of action. It's more like you're waiting for the big bad to pop out, and that's what makes it great. So, but Aliens is also really good. It's a little bit more action-packed, and you get to see a little bit more of that monster, and which means that there's a little bit more gore. So if you're not into it, / you're not sure, just be aware of that going in. But yeah, Aliens, that is a good choice. What else? I think that's basically it. I've covered, what we do here and all that other fun stuff. This is our third live stream, so like we're still ironing out the kinks and going through not going through the motions, but just kind of like figuring things out. Um, I don't have a go. Lily Lockwood says I don't have a go-to Halloween read, but I recently read Our Darkest Hour by Gabriella E. Mari. In terms of movies, I watched Barbarian last weekend. It was super good, but did have a bit of gore. Also made me scream a few times. I have not actually heard of either of those things, but I will have to check those out. Especially Our Darkest Hour, because that just by title alone, they say don't judge a book by its cover and whatnot. But that is an excellent little title. Let me just kind of Google that real quick on the side. You can tell I'm procrastinating. Hmm. Ooh, it's a suspense novel. Oh, that does sound good. According to our friend Amazon, coming into his psychic powers by accident, Adrian Sinclair finds he has the ability to see and communicate with spirits, yet zero understanding of how anything works. So when the YouTube famous Crossroads Paranormal Research Society offers to take him under their wing, he knows he is in no position to refuse. As Adrian learns what it means to be a paranormal investigator and how to navigate his newfound online celebrity status, he discovers that psychics are quitting en masse, and there are only vague rumors as to why, until something beyond his reach starts stalking him. And going to add that to the wish list and TBR. Thank you very much. And hello, Eric. Or Ark? I keep on mispronouncing your name, but hello, Nerd Rage QC. Welcome to the stream. We are definitely not procrastinating on anything right now. Um, so yeah, just a quick catch up. Welcome to Night Rights. We are a chill hangout session full of lo-fi beats and writing. There is an icebreaker as always, and that's what we're on right now. It's basically a question of the night, and tonight's question is, what's your go-to Halloween read or watch? Anything that you feel like talking about that you would read slash write or read slash watch this time of year. Just tossing out awesome recs in general. It doesn't have to be horror, just whatever is fall themed. Um, it's very good. Lily Lockwood says that our Doctor's Tower is very good, and I am looking at this with both eyes, and I'm like, hell yeah. I need to actually clear my TBR, but this is definitely going to go on the November reads. Um, anyway, Hocus Pocus and Nightmare Before Christmas, no contest. Solid choices, the both of those, especially Hocus Pocus. Not so much Hocus Pocus 2. Personally, I thought it was like flatter, but kind of pandering as most of the reboots slash callbacks to nostalgia have been. But Hocus Pocus 1 is it's such a just chef's kiss mood. It's the vibe. It's all three of the Sanderson sisters, and just like they were so good in those roles. And of course, Binks the cat. It's like distilled everything that you loved about Halloween as a kid in a movie form. I like the second one, but the first one is definitely better. Yeah, that's probably it. Like I kept on comparing the second one to the first one. And it's sort of like, yeah. I did appreciate though Winnie's backstory in the second one. Like, just Winnie content in general. Like, she's such a good character, and I loved the fact that we got to know where you know, how she got to be where she is, and got like that entire sisterly vibe to her. I don't know. I just love her. I'll hold out hope for Hocus. There's a Hocus Pocus 3 coming out? What? Let me Google this just a sec. Oh, there is. Huh. I mean, go for it, guys. I guess if it makes you money, it makes you money, whatever. But like, it's not. kind of funny how they just keep on killing the Sanderson sisters and just keep on bringing them back. It's very on brand for them, I have to say. But still. It is currently 8:20. I should actually dive into tonight's writing session. Y'all are free to continue talking, and I will continue reading the chat and responding to whatever pops up. Well, there were rumors, but the half of two kind of hinted. That's true. And yeah. And the thing about movies these days is like they always try to hint at that sequel because sequels and series are money makers these days, so I can't blame them. But I'm curious now to see where the three would go at this point. Let's talk more type. I know. All right, so going into the work for tonight. If you've been tuning into the other streams, I've been editing my hopefully fingers crossed soon to be debut, The Nameless Song. It is, as I like to put it, Magic Knight Rares. It meets The Locked Tomb, which are terrible comp titles, but to give you an idea of the vibe. It is essentially about Mick Marin, who is a magicless waiter in a world full of magic, who has a secret crush on the daughter of the local count, Eleanor de Toilier. Eleanor has decided to go off on an adventure and has asked Mick to accompany her, but which Mick agrees to because of crush. But one thing leads to another, and he gets stuck as a dragon and dragged into a divine war. We are currently editing chapter 11. That is a few chapters after the Great Dragoning, aka Mick getting changed into a dragon and dumped with this divine thing. Yeah, this is right now, for context, they are in the nearest town outside of the forest where he found the amulet that changed him to a dragon. Right now, this is Mick's first experience in civilization as a dragon, and fun shall ensue. So, without further ado, let's get started into editing. Mick drifted into and out of sleep for a few hours after Eleanor left him in the stables. It was practically all he could do. There wasn't much to occupy a person as it was. There wasn't much to occupy a person, but with every... There wasn't much to... It was practically all he could do. There wasn't much to occupy him, but with every other horse consumed with terror over his mere presence, Mick decided that staying as still as possible would perhaps be the best idea. There wasn't much to occupy him otherwise, I think. Mick decided that staying as still as possible would perhaps be the best idea for the next 12 hours, so he slept. Eyes drifting closed every so often, only to flutter open when the sun was a little lower in the western sky. Nope. He faded in and out of consciousness, blinking away the afternoon little by little, and for a long while nothing changed. The gnome sat off to the side, dozing just as much as Mick. Nobody came in with new horses. The horses already there were still unnerved by Mick's presence, but could do nothing but cower away from his stall. For hours, the stables and all its occupants were still and quiet. And then, at one point, Mick opened his eyes to hear and heard whispering. Then at one point, Mick opened his eyes and heard whispering. He stared blearily into the courtyard just outside of the stables until he realized... Stared blearily into the courtyard just outside the stables. Until he noticed. There we go. The voice came not from the gnome, but from a few stalls away. Yeah, I know. Things have gotten interesting, haven't they? The fortune teller. Luca, wasn't it? Wasn't it? The one who read Eleanor's fortune in Phelan Vale. The one who saw right through her glamour on the road from Phelan Woods. What was she doing there? Nick pushed his head out of the stall just a little more to get a good look at the elf. She stood 5 stalls down, hands around the muzzle of a gray horse. Did I had did I say I had a good feeling about that one? She said, to the horse. And here we are. Those winds of change are blowing hard now, aren't they? What is she talking about? And why to the horse? Of course I'll keep an eye on her. What do you take me for? She said, her face dripping into. Actually, I like it. Her voice dripping into deep frown. Anyway, keep an eye out, okay? No. God damn, I wrote this and I was like fucking half asleep. Anyway, stand watch, okay? First one in how long? She pulled her face closer to the horses and smirked. Can't have them croaking before things get really interesting. She paused, her smile faded again, and her eyes narrowed even more sharply than before. Of course not. I told you I gave up. Why would I lie to you about that? She continued. I just think that there are way too many coincidences piling up around those two. Things that didn't happen with the others. Whatever's going on, I think it'd be a good idea to keep an eye on both of them. Something big is going to happen. And flagging this as a potential cut. What's going on? They think it'd be a good idea to keep an eye on both of them. Something big is going to happen, and it's about to happen, and those kids are going to be at the center of it. And wasn't it you who kept telling me our job is to find kids desperately in over their heads? Fits the description to a T, don't you think? Oh, so she was crazy. That was fine. Mick closed his eyes again, opting to ignore her, but something didn't quite feel right. An uncomfortable, squirming feeling crawled across his bones. He opened his eyes again to find Luca staring directly at him. She smiled and pressed a finger to her lips. And this is one thing that the Alphas had commented on. Let me just check their notes real quick. Yeah. And then a wave of exhaustion swept over Mick, and before he could fight it, he fell into a deep sleep. That's better. The temple again. Mick lay flat on his back in the shadow of the statue, stone face. Stone face glared down at him. Yep. Mick lay flat on his back in the shadow of the statue. Its stone face glared down at him. Its stone face glared down at him. Arms spread, hands turned heavenward. Actually, yeah, that works. Stone face glared down at him, arms spread, hands turned heavenward. I'll give you this, McMurrin. The dead god's masked face swam into view, eclipsing that of the unknown deity. Him? Hmm. Him? That thought hadn't occurred to Mick. I thought hadn't occurred to Mick. Nope. There we go. He lowered himself beside Mick, squatting almost undeity-like by one of... Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know where I was in terms of writing this, but none of this makes sense, and I kind of feel like I was very distracted. I don't know, but damn. Like Lockwood says, I've been there. Yep. And then it's sort of like you write and you're like, it'll make sense to editing me. And then editing me is like, what the fuck were you on? Anyway, uh, the dead god's masked face swam into view, eclipsing that of the unknown deity. He lowered himself beside Mick, squatting on the stunned deity like by one of his outstretched arms. That isn't me, he said. Mick squinted, and pieces of puzzle floated together in his hazy mind. That isn't me, the dead god said. That is a very long story, one I might tell you one day if you prove me wrong. He dropped his eyes, dropped his face a little more, because he can't see his eyes. He dropped his face a little more. As I was saying, dropped his head a little more. There we go. He dropped his head a little more. As I was saying, I'll give you this, McMartin. You're an audacious one. Even after our last meeting, you were thinking of cornering me again. Was he? He was. In his defense, he was already exhausted. In his defense, he was already exhausted at these games. Mick, the dead god sighed, that girl's spell wasn't that strong. You do have the strength to talk, you know. Mick thought for a second. Hypothetically, he said slowly, if I tried to corner you again right here and now, how fast would you pummel drain me into the ground? Oh, immediately, the dead god replied. Yeah, I thought as much. I'm fine down here. Heard of these. There we go. His defense, he was already tired of these divine games. Mick, the dead god sighed, that girl's spell wasn't that strong. The girl's spell wasn't that strong. You do have the strength to talk, you know. Mick thought for a second. Hypothetically, he said, if I tried to corner you again, right here and now, how fast would you pummel drain me into the ground? Oh, immediately, the dead god replied. Yeah, I thought as much. I'm fine down here. Very well, but stubbornness out of spite isn't going to get you far. Mick lifted himself to his elbows. Are you baiting me into doing something that will make you pummel drain me into the ground? What I am What I am looking for out of my saints is strength, the dead god said evenly, with a sort of tone that sounded on the surface like patience, but was actually a thinly veiled warning to not test said patience. That is, strength of will, strength of body, any sort of strength. And I don't possess any of that, Mick replied, equally barely highly. You possess strength of will, the dead god replied. It's simply misdirected. That is the kindest way I have ever been called a stubborn piece of work. Mick pushed himself onto his hands and slid his feet beneath himself in one smooth motion. With an upward sweep, he was upright, albeit teetering with a lack of balance. Listen, he continued, you're not the first person to tell me that. You just happen to be the most powerful. Yes, I have questions for you, but I don't see a point in asking them if you're not going to answer. He shoved his hands into the pockets of his dream self's trousers and glared hard at a spot off in the distance, away from the dead god. Frankly, I think this whole thing is a waste of time. Might as well just release me, or whatever you call it. Turn me back and let me go on my merry way. The dead god rose, casting a shadow over Mick. If it were that easy to choose and bind a prophet, I would. My artifacts cannot be transferred from one part. However, that does need a however. However, however, my artifacts cannot be transferred from one prophet to another. Once one binds itself to a mortal, that mortal becomes my instrument in your world until they either fulfill their purpose or bluntly pass on. And if Phelan is correct, the one bound to you is the last one in existence. This would make you my last hope. These words settled around Mick like cold blocks of lead as the dead god spoke them, until that final period dropped like a hammer. Fulfill his purpose or pass on, the dead god's last hope. Those were his choices, and this was his existence. His hand groped to his neck, and he was only mildly surprised that his dream self was not wearing the artifact. Instead, he tugged at his scarf as a spike of frustration blossomed within him. Fulfill his purpose or pass on. What a joke of a choice. So I'm stuck, Mick said. It's either I do what you want and get to be human again, or I die and I don't. The dead god said nothing. Well then, what do you want me to do? Mick continued, opening his arms wide. I'm your last hope, aren't I? So tell me what your prophets do, and I'll do it. The dead god turned his head away. Over 600 prophets came before you. Most threw themselves eagerly into their tasks once I told them what I needed them to do. All of them died at the hands of the Dawnlit. Change that name. The Dawnlit before they could fulfill them. Many died before they completed the first mile of their journey. What makes you think you're different? It was Mick's turn to fall silent, but this time it wasn't to be a brick wall. Instead, it was because he saw right through those words, right down to the nugget of truth underneath them. And he felt like he had hit a brick wall. It wasn't to be a brick wall. And he felt like he hit a brick wall. There we go. Even felt a pang in his chest, like something hit him nearly hard enough. Like something struck his sternum. There we go. Like something struck his sternum hard enough to knock the wind out of him. You're not keeping things from me because you don't think I can do it, are you? He said softly. You're keeping things from me because you've seen everyone else die. I'm not your last hope. That's already passed. The dead god gave him a sideways glance, actually tilted his head and peered at him sideways like a bird regarding a curiosity on the ground. Mick took a step towards him. Look, I get that's a risk, but if I don't try, I'm dead anyway. At least tell me what you need me to do. Let me think about it. For yourself? The dead god deadpanned. You should know that there were others fueled by desperation. You should know that there were others fueled by the desperation for a way out of the circumstance Biden bestows on them. These were the ones whose tenures as my prophets were often the shortest. These were the ones whose tenures as my prophets were the shortest. Let me just quickly review. No further notes. Cool. Alright, back at this. Yes. Yes, Mick was desperate for a solution. And yes, a lot of that was for selfish reasons, but also, he wasn't alone. It was odd, but that was the first thought in his mind whenever he thought of finding a way back. How clumsy his body was as a dragon, how unwieldy, how obvious, how deadly, how useless, how much of a burden it would be for Eleanor. He couldn't light a campfire without risking burning down a forest. He couldn't be seen without putting the both of them in danger. And worse yet, where was he right then outside of that dream world, in a stable, far away from Eleanor? This thing was a burden. He was a burden. And it was only going to get worse the closer they got to Eldavin. That was why he needed to be human again. Not for himself, for Eleanor. It's complicated, he said. Your friend, the dead god replied, his voice light. It was as if he had clocked Mick in the same way Mick had clocked him a moment ago. And to say that rubbed Mick the wrong way was an understatement. I rubbed him backwards with a. This is the one that my alphas had a problem with. Boom. It rubbed him backwards with a club wrapped in rough tree bark. So he glared at the dead god. Don't you dare talk about her. The dead god tilted his head once more. He regarded Mick quietly, as if weighing each individual syllable. You fascinate me, Mick Martin, he said, and I assume I don't need to tell you how difficult that is. Mick flexed his fingers into fists. Oh, he knew this god would floor him the instant he tried to do something. He hadn't forgotten the first half of this conversation. But the dead god was going to deal with him, not Eleanor. That much he was sure of, with every spark of that strong will the dead god said he had. Reading this aloud, it kind of feels like it's going very fast, so let me just leave myself a note for a vision. So, he said, he dared. So, the dead god replied, I will give you one chance. I am going to give you something, something I've asked every prophet before you to carry. If you can carry it past Phelan's challenge, then perhaps we could indeed work together. Does this sound reasonable? He extended a hand, ready to shake. Now, Mick might have spent all his life in the same small town, but he knew better than to make deals with demons. Literally in this case. So he hesitated, thought about it for a second. But then he took a deep breath. He didn't have much of a choice, did he? If it'll get me back into my old body again, he said, sure. With that, he whipped his hand out and latched it onto the dead gods. All of a sudden, a song exploded into his head, haunting, echoing, a voice weaving notes in a language he didn't know existed. It spoke of the stars and the spaces between them, the earth and the sky above, oceans, white foam peaks, and the black, crushing depths. All of creation and the frayed threads unraveling. Sorry to just join in. First and foremost, hello Gladys. Second, welcome. Sorry, let me get my thoughts together. Also, this is Reynos for B-Sky. Oh, hey! Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sorry for, I guess, using I was going off of your display name, but sorry to just join in. Love Nightmare Before Christmas. Also an excellent choice. I have not seen that movie in ages upon ages, but I do appreciate the animation and the fact that it is a very classic movie and also a very adorable love story, if I do say so myself. As you can tell, Sally is probably my favorite character out of that. But yes, welcome to the chat. I should not go too deeply into the usual spiel. I am currently in the middle of editing chapter 11, scene 3 out of 4. You haven't missed too much. No worries, I use Gmail for official stuff. Totally understandable. It is a good option. Sally is so great. Indeed. But yeah, feel free to talk amongst yourselves, guys. I know that it's kind of been a quiet chat tonight. We haven't had cat chat as we had a few nights ago. But feel free to chatter with each other while I continue reading aloud the Nameless Song and Dragon Shenanigans in general. But yeah. Yay for knowing exactly where you are heading. Um, sort of. I don't know if you can see, well, actually, I do know because I'm looking at OBX right now, but basically, the story goes from chapter 13 to 24. That's because I had recently ripped out a good third of the story with plans to rewrite. And the reason I am doing that is because, as I keep on saying on B Sky, this story is 168 words long otherwise. And the alphas are just sort of like, this part makes no sense. So it's sort of like, I ripped out a third of the story. I have no idea what's going to happen between 13 and 24 because I only have 30,000 words to tell it in. So I know where I am at editing, but I also don't know where I am at editing because I'm going to have to rewrite the bridge between these and try to compress 50,000 words into 30. When I put it like that, it's not as bad. Like 50,000 into 30,000. Well, I can't math. It's 70,000 that I'd have to compress into 30,000. But in any case, I had made the decision earlier this week to essentially move 2 entire arcs into the next book. Lily Lockwood says you can still say a lot in 30,000 words. That is very true. And I'm hoping that after re-outlining for the umpteenth time, I'll be able to figure things out. And also realizing that I can just shove arcs into the next book. Because I was also doing some outlining for book 2 earlier this week, and I realized that one of the story beats I had was basically note for note an entire arc of this one. And I was like, well, why don't you just do one or the other? It'll cut out like 10,000 to 15,000 words if you just don't do it in here. So it's like figuring out those little life hacks, but also reshaping parts of the book because that does mean less dragon, which means I have to go back through the first 7 chapters of this book, trim down, make more dragons. So actually, now that I'm like talking this out with you guys, it might actually be more cuts that might happen to make dragon happen faster, which means, you know, it's salvageable, but it's going to take a lot more work. And the sad fact is, I was kind of hoping to query this year, but, you know, I'm also trying to make it myself feel okay with querying next year. Excuse me, next year. Uh, just remember, kids, it is never too late to get started or to chase after your dreams. The entire point is that you're working on them, not that it's taking forever. So long as you're working on them, then it's a, you know, you can't freeze up and never chase after them. Working on them is still okay. And that is like the G.I. Joe says of the session. Chase after your dreams. Just don't worry about how long it takes to get there. It'll happen eventually. And so on and so forth, as I keep on saying. But anyway, got Reno says, I feel you reversions. Yep, yep. On the positive side, like the lost media for books like these is gonna be lit. Like, if you ever get to be famous, you have like that cool ass entry in the Lost Media Wiki being like, there were thousands of words that got cut. What happened in those? And just keep going with that thought, I guess. Point is, yeah, editing and revising and cutting is a mood and it's tough. But we shall get through it, all of us, at one point or another. Um, anyway, was I, and then I click back on and accidentally kick the scroll bar. That's how that works for sure. There you go. Haunting, echoing, a voice weaving notes in a language he didn't know existed. I spoke of the stars and the spaces between them, the earth and sky above, oceans, white foam peaks, and the black crashing depths. All of creation and all of the frayed threads unraveling at its edges. And all the frayed threads of reality unraveling at its edges. A story so long and so encompassing it wove poetry into every minute of every life that crawled within it. The song was old and vast and big, so big like the ocean of lumina within him. And the lumina within him and swirled at its call, as if remembering the voice of a long gone friend. It surged in the cage that was his body, charged up his throat. He couldn't stop it. He couldn't stop himself. All he could do was open his jaws and sing. And the fires burst from his soul and consumed stables. All right. One last scene. Let's see if we can get through this. It is a fight scene, no less, so this is going to be fun. And so Mick awoke, wreathed in flames. I'd say surrounded by. Because wreathed is also a crutch word here. Lockwood says, I've discovered that I'm a bit of an underwriter myself. My first draft is probably going to bottom out at around 70K, and I was hoping for closer to 85K. Not sure where I'm going to find those 15K words. That one's a tough one. I feel like these days it's easier. I know the saying goes that it's easier to cut than it is to add, but if you go one extreme or the other, it's so much harder. And with cutting, at least, I found that it's harder to cut your babies essentially. Whereas with if you're underwriting on the positive side, you know, you have that base. You just need to find points in your story and develop them a little bit more and add in more words. But if you're looking to publish, you're actually in a better shape than somebody who's overwriting. Because it's much easier to sell a short book than it is a long one. Nobody will, with everybody's attention span as it is, you know, if we make fun of Stephen King and older writers for writing doorstops, essentially. But yeah, I feel like that's my best advice if you're finding that your draft is too short. Just consider this. Just remember it's a draft. So like when you go back in, really pay attention to the beats that seem a little bit weaker. Take notes on those beats and see if you can develop them outwards a little bit more. And that's how you go from a 70K draft to a huge ass draft. I say that having written a lot of short drafts myself and developing them into longer ones. I have, for example, one book that is kind of on the back burner right now. It's called Always the Bridesmaid, and I won't go into what it's about because it is very complicated to talk about, and also it is a book that I don't plan on publishing until after I'm done with this trilogy. But basically, the the story of writing it goes that it started off as a novella. It was only about 30,000, 40,000 words. The draft I have that's sitting around, I actually kind of want to see. I have it. I don't know if it'll actually pop up on screen. Let me just see where it's at. This doesn't even matter. I'm just doing it for you guys. It's 40,000 words. How long was the original one? This will be just a sec. That's the beta. here it is. Always the bridesmaid. The original draft was... Okay, so it was still kind of short. It went from 35,000 words to 50,000 words, and it was just me going through and being like, you know, this chapter is weak. I want to build it up, and I want to build up this storyline over here to make it a little bit stronger. Uh, this story doesn't feel complete if I don't add in this character, but this character needs his own scene. So it's sort of like uh, it'll bulk up the more drafts that you do. It's just that it requires you to actually sit down and read your draft first and really get a sense of what bits need to be tweaked and what bits need to be strengthened. But 70,000 is a really good skeleton. Like Lockwood says, I'm a pantser, so I suppose that it was inevitable, but that it was going to end up shorter. Oh, yeah, yeah. 100%. Um, I do miss pantsing. I miss being able to pants. But remembering all those times that I did pants, it's sort of like you just let the story happen as it happens. And some people are like, I just did everything that I wanted to do, and now I don't know what to do. Versus, I am going to tell my story in literally a million words. But, where is I going with this? Uh, in other words, yeah, I totally get that. I do wish you the best of luck with it, though, and I don't think I've ever really experienced editing as a pantser. I do hope that it goes well for you, for sure. Uh, I know that it's a completely different editing in general is a completely different experience from flying by the seat of your pants through a draft. So hopefully, it goes smooth. You're very welcome too. Um, so scene 4, and this will be the last scene of the night because that means that we'll have hammered through this entire chapter. Here we go. And so Mick woke surrounded by flames. Fire licked at his scales, wrapping tongues around him like the gentle feelings of like the gentle fingers of old friends. He felt the heat, but it didn't hurt, like the gentle arms of old friends. Don't be creepy. He felt the heat, but it didn't hurt. It didn't even scorch him. He felt right, home. Except the panicked braying of horses around him and the cracking of lumber sobered him up immediately. He was on his... What the crap? That's funny as hell. He was on his feet in seconds, but the flames were brilliant and the smoke thick, and all he could see was orange and black. He backed away from the door to the stall, although it didn't matter where he went. Flames climbed every inch of wood around him. Had he... Something smashed into the door to his... stall door. Something's... Let me see something real quick. The panic braying of horses around him and the cracking of lumber sobered him up immediately. No, actually, that makes sense, and he was on his feet in seconds. But the flames were brilliant and the smoke thick, and all he could see was orange and black. He backed away from the door to his stall, though it didn't matter where he went. Flames climbed every inch of wood around him. Had he... Something smashed into the stall door. A shape moved rapidly from his to the next one over. From his stall to the... to the next one over, smashing into it as well. On and on down the row, smash, followed by the squealing of horses and the thunder of hooves. Mick scrambled to the front of the stall, only to be struck by a passing horse. He stumbled backward, swinging out of the way of a small stampede, as every horse in the stables raced out of the burning building. Structure. When the last one vanished, only he remained, cowering in the burning stall. And then there was a shape, a shadow, a tall figure, heavy-set with silver eyes. The figure peered at him for a long while, eyes shining with a strange light, before trailing away. Mick followed them out, stumbling into the row outside of the stall, but nobody was there. Above him, the roof of the stable groaned. Mick flicked his eyes skyward. The wood above him bowed, consumed in fire. Mick didn't think about it. He dashed through the burning stables, barreling through the growing flames of wall. The growing flames and smoke until he burst out through the other side. The courtyard just into open air, barreling through the growing flames and smoke until he burst into open air. The courtyard just outside was empty. No horses, no strange figures, nothing except the gnome stableman, who was busy shouting commands down the alleyway to a cluster of elves pouring out of the inn. On the last command to find the fire brigade, the gnome turned back around and locked eyes with Mick. The gnome paled out. He turned back around and locked eyes with Mick. The gnome paled at once, nearly to the shade of fresh fallen snow. His eyes bulged from his head, and his mouth moved lengthily. Open and closed, open and closed. One trembling hand rose, a tiny finger pointed directly at Mick. Mick took one step back, then two. The glamour had it. He dipped, lowering himself to the ground, untangled his wings, readied his muscles, and then the gnome confirmed all of his suspicions. Dragon! The gnome sprinted down the alley, feet pounding cobblestone, voice raised to a fever pitch. Dragon! Dragon! Mick spread his wings and took the sky before anyone had the chance to storm down the alleyway. He rose quickly on the updraft of the inferno, sailing over the rooftops of Meadowlark. From far overhead, his sharpened draconic eyes scanned the streets. He watched the fire berets rush to the inn. He watched the commotion caused by the stablemen. He watched eyes turn skyward to see him cutting through. He watched eyes turn up he watched eyes turn up to see him cutting through the air, cutting through the sky. Let me see something. Faces turn up. Watch faces turn skyward. Okay. See him cutting through the air, but he didn't see Eleanor. Where was she? He turned, sailing on hot winds to the adventurer-choked main street and to the town square. Eyes turned up. Screams erupted as he went, but he didn't think twice about them. They didn't matter. Finding Eleanor and getting her to safety mattered. Was the sky darker? The sky was darker. Something fell onto his back. Something cold, and when he rolled to the side, it rolled and dripped right off his scales. Oh, hey, Cryptic, what's up? How's everyone doing tonight? Everyone is doing a-okay-ish. Emotionally, have been going through a roller coaster, but editorially doing very well. We've gone through 3 scenes so far, on to the 4th. And so far, you know, we're chilling. I think we're all just kind of chilling. Like, we've already talked about the icebreaker of the night, though feel free to chime in with your recs. We've talked about motivation and revisions and all kinds of other fun things. But how are you tonight? Slash, what's your Halloween rec? Slash, what are have you brought with you in terms of productivity? Which is something I have not actually asked anybody else. Is anybody else working on something? I promise I will get to answers as soon as I stop distracting myself. Cryptic says, nothing much is up. I have to feed the cats in an hour, so I'm on my phone on the couch. Glad to hear editing progress is good. Sounds like a chill night, in other words. Like chilling with cats, chilling with us. That sounds really cool. Let me just turn on the heat. Something fell onto his back, something cold, and when he rolled to the side, it rolled with him and dripped right off his scales. Excuse me. Another fell, then another, and another. Mick afforded the sky a single glance. It was raining. Where did these rain clouds come from? Hmm. Wasn't it chilling by taking a break from Lily Lockwood says, chilling by taking a break from drafting the climax of my work in progress by working on a short story about a fairy cowboy and his chinchilla steed. That sounds so adorable. I hope to read Fairy Cowboy and Chinchilla Steed. Please keep me in the loop about that. Because, like, Westerns in general, we need more of that, and cowboys. Liptic says, my go-to Halloween watch has been Nightmare Before Christmas for years. May reread the horror story my friend published recently because it was so good. Both awesome. You are in very good company about Nightmare Before Christmas. We had also discussed that as a Halloween classic. Uh, and as for the horror story, hell yeah to supporting writing friends. If you like, just feel free to toss me a link whenever you'd like, and I will give that a look see myself. Uh, Haz on the keyboard says, I am drawing some idea for a zine. Smiley face. I am very curious about drawing. Just had to check for something real quick. I am very curious about drawing Anzine, so feel free to go on. Cryptic says, I love the idea of a chinchilla steed. That is, yeah, I mean, very much kudos to you, Lily Lockwood, because that sounds really awesome right there. Also extremely adorable. Like, it's a chinchilla. It's for a cover competition that Impossible World is hosting. I'll definitely need a beta reader or two. Beta words are fun. Beta reader. There we go. I'll definitely need a beta reader or two for it once I'm done. Impossible Worlds. Gotcha. 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 Well, I will keep an eye out for calls for that because that is really interesting. Also, I wish you the best of luck with the cover competition. I am. Either way, I wish you the best of luck with the competition, and I am really looking forward to checking out once it is either submitted or once betas go up. I will definitely keep my eyes out for that. Pause and Keyboard says it's like offshore theme, but actually based on a mental health experience. Oh, those are always fun. Like, you can take that in so many different ways. Like, I have read some really cool urban fantasy that was based on mental health, opposy shenanigans. But, for sure. Cryptic says I will get the link for oh, it's Incorrect Eyes. Okay. I think I know what you're talking about. I've actually follow the writer of that myself. I just didn't realize that that was a short story, to be honest with you. I've been meaning to pick that up. For some reason, I thought for the longest time that was actually just another novel, and I feel terrible right now because I know exactly who you're talking about. Um, if anyone else is interested in submitting for it, uh, okay, I will definitely check it out for sure. Let's see, Impossible Worlds. Oh, okay, okay, okay. Let's see. Oh, okay, here we go. They have it emblazoned. Oh, that is a really clever idea, like making you write the story behind the art. So that does sound like a lot of fun. I will have to just keep this link in mind because if that's a regular thing, I would love to see. I might actually want to participate at some point for sure. Cryptic says, yeah, I actually gave Andy the name of it. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I've been seeing it a lot of stuff about it on Insta as I was opening up Insta to check out Folk Rock Senpai and see if they have any posts. But yeah, like looking at Insta, Andy has such a knack for vibes in general. And I've been kind of like dragging my feet about actually diving into writing lately, but if it's Andy's work, I'm sure that it is amazing, but I definitely need to dive in and check that out. Lily Lockwood says, yeah, I thought it was a fun challenge. It sounds like they'll be doing it for all future editions. That is awesome. I have it literally bookmarked right now. I'm going to toss it also into, you know what? I'm going to toss into chat as well. So y'all can have it too. The cover story contest page in particular. Because we're all writers here, so there you go. I'm going to save that to my own personal Discord so I can have it for later, and boom. But yeah, I'm going to keep an eye out on this page, both for your entry and just in general for future contests, because that is really cool. Cryptic says it started as a short story and then we bullied him affectionately into making it longer and fleshing out a bit more. That makes a lot more sense. I guess that's why I thought it was a short story. I didn't I didn't realize that he actually pushed on past that point. But yeah, for sure. Thank you. I will definitely check that out when I have a chance. Um okay. Diving back in. Let's see. The fire brigade, that must have been it. Was it what was it that could summon rainstorms? Wind witches? Water witches? It's really interesting that, so, fun story. Early drafts of this novel had witches and clerics. Witches were people who used their own magical essence and wove spells, just drawing from that. And clerics used the power of gods, whatever power that was bestowed on them they can use for whatever spell work that they needed to have done. But they were limited to just the amount of power that the god would give them. Clerics had remained, but witches had eventually evolved into mages. I fully blame Final Fantasy and the fact that you have black mages, white mages, red mages, blue mages, and so on. And I guess like in attempting to describe the different adventure classes, uh, you have your battle mage, which is just somebody who uses magic to hunt monsters, and Eleanor herself is a battle mage. So I guess I accidentally started calling witches mages and lost the entire witch element, but none of this matters. It's just a little fun fact. that you can definitely tell where the first draft was in all this mess. Cryptic says a full rainbow of mages. Eventually, I mean, Final Fantasy does have quite a few different mages. Not 14. It's just red, blue, white, and black. With white and black being your two core mages. Then red is like almost like not a prestige job, but it's like a job that you get later on. You can have later on in the game. Blue mages is the prestige job that nobody does seriously because you can't do anything with it except level up for funsies. But you know, in Final Fantasy, if you're not familiar with the franchise, there are other different. There are other mage types. You have your green mages. I actually think that's it. Uh, I think they also have time mages, which is not a color, but you know. This is me rambling at this point because we're getting to a fight scene, and it's also been an hour since I've started streaming, and I'm slowly losing the plot. But anyway, the fire brigade, that must have been it. What was it that could summon rainstorms? Wind mages? Water mages? Where was Eleanor? And then something struck him from below, and this time it wasn't cold and painless. Hot tongues of burning pain flicked through his chest. He rolled in the sky, tail flicking around his legs, while he groped at the source of his pain. Fingers curled around something long and wooden. When he pulled it out, he found himself staring at an arrow. Another struck him in the back, then another, then 10 more. Cryptic says my only Final Fantasy knowledge comes from Kingdom Hearts, which means it's incredibly lacking. I'd hate to say it, but yeah, Kingdom Hearts. I have to give you props though for if you're following Kingdom Hearts lore, because like attempting to get any lore out of Kingdom Hearts is a feat in itself, as I've understand it. I'm not saying yeah to your lack of knowledge of Final Fantasy because that's an iceberg in itself, and I can't blame you for not knowing too much. But hot damn, Kingdom Hearts. Anyway, but yeah, I'm a casual Final Fantasy fan. I have to say, like, don't look to me for lore. Besides 14, I've played tactics and snippets of the other games. I've been meaning to blaze through the everything from 1 to all the way up to 16, which they're at now. But I just, you know, it's time and money, to be honest with you. Piracy is right there, I know, but like, it's just easy. At this point, it's like weirdly easier to buy the games, I feel like. But in any case, I just basically know 14 and surface level beyond that. But if you're curious about the basic lore, yeah, I can definitely go off about that. Slash, if you're looking for lore about 14 in general, and it specifically, I am a bit of a lore nerd for that. Cryptic also says, to be honest, I often forget what's canon to KH and what I made up to fill in the gaps that annoy me. That is it wrong to think that's funny as hell. Although I really don't believe you. Or not believe you. I'm so sorry. That is not what I meant. I really don't blame you because I can't believe the actual canon. That is what I meant to say. I have actually seen hour-long videos that tried to explain the lore, and I got lost so hard. I've even seen graphics that were supposed to explain the timeline, and it looped back into itself and looked like an entire ball of this jumbled up string, and I was like, so aesthetic game. This is what this is, right? That's what's going on here. We're just fan fiction and aesthetics. Don't get me wrong though, it looks fun as hell to play, and I've played a little bit of snippets from Kingdom Hearts as well, and the bits that I have played were fun, but I get the feeling that you're not really supposed to know what the lore is. Anyway, another struck him in the back, then another, then 10 more. He fell down, down, down until he crashed at the feet of the statue in the town square. Cryptic says there's time travel and follow certain rules until it doesn't. That sounds about right from what I've heard of Kingdom Hearts. Everything hurt then. He groaned and pulled himself to his feet. He could feel each and every arrow clicking together as he moved. Adventurers lined up in front of him, right at the edge of the square, weapons brandished. No. Cryptid said it's definitely confusing on purpose. Yeah, I kind of feel like that's it. Like, because they came out with games in quick succession at one point until they made you wait for like forever for 3. But it kind of felt like, it's not like a series where they're just retconning it left and right. It felt like they have a story in mind, but it's not designed to be easy to follow, which is valid. Um, I do. I hope that it's kind of like one of those cases where you're going to get this. You're probably going to I hope that it's the case where you get like to like Kingdom Hearts 6 or something like that, and then all of a sudden everything comes together and stuff like that. But until then, I cannot blame people for writing fan fiction of this one in particular and being like, fuck the canon, I'm going to have my own playground, because like I do not envy Kingdom Hearts lore nerds. I salute them wholeheartedly. You are doing the Lord's work. And you are also incredibly brave. But anyway. No. Kind of makes sense because Sora is dropped in with no context, but it's frustrating in the games where you aren't playing him. Ah. Oh, I mean, I don't know enough about Kingdom Hearts to know too much about the story behind the other player characters, I admit. Like, I've heard of them, like Roxas, and there's a game. One of the games takes place in the past and has to do with the original Keyblade masters. But I don't remember what the name of the Sora analog there was. But him as well. Like I've heard of them. I don't know enough about their story to know what it's like to play in their shoes as opposed to Sora, and how much story that they should know. But yeah, I'm sure that's really difficult to follow. Anyway, he groaned and pulled himself to his feet. He could feel each and every arrow clicking together as he moved. There's something that I also want to actually add here. Ventus, Terra, and Aqua. Yes, those people. They should know a lot of things and nothing. That sounds about right. Guns and up. Now, granted, I will say this to the note that I just added. There is a reason why bows and arrows are still in use, and it's the same reason why great swords and long swords like Titania are still used, even though that this is a Gaslamp fantasy, and supposedly, you've moved on to more modern stuff. And there are a couple of reasons. Number one, hashtag aesthetic. And number two, in certain cases, it's just easier to use a bow and arrow than a gun. The magical reason is that it is easier to weave magic with bows and arrows than guns. That is a departure from Final Fantasy shenanigans wherein bullets get charged beforehand. You can charge bullets too, but it's like you can't really. I don't know. It's like it's not on the fly. Whereas with a bow and arrow, you can wrap your magic around the arrow. You can use the bow by itself to fire, to channel your spell into a single arrow, which is something that you see with like Lord Ismail, who's the saint of Phelan and therefore the saint of dark magic. His go-to is actually supposed to be like his usual weapon is a gun, but when he's working with shadow magic, because Phelan is his patron, he's using a bow and arrow made of shadow magic. So he's literally streaming, conjuring shadows into an arrow form. So basically, if you run out of bullets or you run out of arrows, it's a lot easier if you just like pick up a bow and you're like, okay, cool. Well, I am now making an arrow of magic. So that is why that is still a thing. The other thing is, some people just choose to be archers instead of gunsmiths. I don't know what to tell you. But there are reasons why people are still using bows and arrows when guns are quote unquote more in line with the time period. Let's see. He fell down, down, down until he crashed at the feet of the statue in the town square. Everything hurt then. He groaned and pulled himself to his feet. He could feel all this while been talk, but I have to drop off because meeting. Have fun. No problem. Thank you for joining us. Uh, yeah, tomorrow we're having another one, so hope you can catch us then. But if not, thank you for dropping in and hanging out with us, and hope you have a good week. He fell down, down, down until he crashed at the feet of the statue in the town square. Everything hurt then. He groaned and pulled himself to his feet. He could feel each and every arrow clicking together as he moved. Adventurers lined up in front of him, right at the edge of the square, weapons brandished, weapons drawn. No, no, he said, his voice straining against the pain. Wait, please, I'm not. A waterfall slammed down directly in front of him. Crashed down. A form dropped out of the sky, massive in sapphire blue and angry. A dragon, large, with webbed feet, fins and tail, with water pooling, rising, swirling around it, stood between the adventurers and Mick. It flashed him a glare with narrow turquoise eyes, then turned to the adventurers and roared. All the water that swirled around itself, it pulled into a tidal wave that rushed at the adventurers. The waves swept down the street, carrying with it people, debris, everything it touched in one large destructive force. Scripted says, makes sense, it works that way. A plan I had for one of my worlds was that the simpler and more straightforward something is, the easier it is to weave magic in because it doesn't have to work with every moving part. Yeah, basically, it's the mommy principle, like with Madoka Magica. I don't know if you watch that, but in that is the character Mommy, who whose chief weapon is actually supposed to be ribbons, but because you can't really do anything with ribbons, they're fucking ribbons. She managed to make her ribbons into guns. But the problem is that in order to get to the gun part, she had to literally study every single piece and portion in order to understand how the guns are fired, what different components of the guns are, because like she had to literally shape guns by hand, and that's even why she uses flintlocks. So therefore, it's like if you have a character that doesn't know how guns work, it just makes more sense to you could have like a character who just conjures guns magically, but it's a lot more fun to be like ribbon guns. Yes. Um, I have. I don't know whether or not I should recommend Madoka Magica. On the surface, it's kind of like an edgy 2010s dark fantasy, but when you get into the background and lore, it gets really interesting, and that is literally Mami's background. When you see her in the anime, she is just a magical girl with ribbons, but then she swirls her ribbons and they turn into big ass guns, or thousands of flintlock rifles. But they're always flintlocks, which are the simplest guns you can possibly have. They're like basically think 18th century muskets and whatnot. Cryptic says, "Ooh, I have not seen Madoka Magica, but I tend to. Uh, it's good. It is very pretty. You will get very frustrated at it, especially if you buy into the cynical reading that girls are not allowed to be happy. It is very grim dark, and girls are not allowed to be happy in that universe, except for one whose happiness comes at the expense of another. But that's all I will say. Love anime girls with big guns. Oh yeah, Mommy is fantastic. Like she can conjure huge ass guns. She can conjure thousands of guns to rain literal bullets onto an enemy. It's pretty cool. The creativity that she has, and I mean that both in terms of a meta standpoint as an outsider looking at magical girl stuff, and as an in story and her in story backstory. Because it's not something that you learn in the actual anime, if I recall correctly. You actually learn that how much work she put into researching guns and figuring out how to turn her ribbons into guns in like a radio drama or something like that on the side. But it's Madoka Magica has is one of those animes where that has like a shit ton of spin-offs, and I highly recommend like sampling not only the main series but also getting into the backstory and side materials as well, because like it's such a developed world. The more that you look into it, it's got amazing world building. Its characters are like hit or miss. But the main quintet is pretty cool and well developed, and you really feel for them, both in just the base level main series and outside of it. Like Mommy, especially, uh, her entire arc is. You will, when you find out more about her backstory, she is such a tragic figure, and I will not give away too much, especially if you intend on actually watching the main series. But once you watch the main series, for sure, go and sample like the radio dramas and side materials where you can learn more about Mommy, because like the main series doesn't do her justice. So yeah. Anyway, uh, where was I going? But yeah, like I think the main thing is like with magic there's, in my opinion, the most interesting magical systems are ones where you have to put thought into your spells, and it's just not like snap fingers make magic happen. Uh like there are limitations and things you can and can't do with spells, and you have to be careful, you have to do your research in order to not fuck up and that kind of thing. And at least with the Nameless Song, that's, like I said, it's easier to draw a straight line and make a stick made out of elemental magic that you can have fly through the air from the bow than it is to concentrate on something that could potentially explode in a gun. There's a lot more physics involved in a gun, and you can't just like stick fire magic in a gun chamber and have that work out. Granted, you also can't like make fire arrow and expect that to work Sailor Mars style. So in some ways this argument doesn't entirely make sense, but I don't know, like it feels a little bit more believable to be like, yeah, draw arrow, make fly, and that is your arrow of magic. Whereas shove fire magic into a surrounding bullet and you end up with explodey and shrapnel. I don't know, in my mind it kind of just makes more sense that way. Um, which is to say, there are there are sharpshooters in the world of the Nameless Song, obviously, because this is a gaslamp fantasy. People use guns. It is just a thing that happens. I also want to open up the idea of cowboy spin-off, which would be fucking awesome. Or at least, like, I'm planning certain parts of the next book to be, and the book after to be set in the west part of Eldana, which is more like frontier. So, firefight, cowboy, fun times with magic guns and stuff like that. So there are people who can do it. It just requires a little bit more thought and patience and care into crafting magic bullets as opposed to just slapping elemental magic on an arrowhead or making an arrow of elemental magic. Hell yes, cowboy spin-offs. Yeah, like I'll have to say, like, one way or another, there are going to be fun spin-offs of the Nameless Song. Like, I have ideas. There is, of course, first, mixed travel journals. After, you know, he quote unquote retires from the shenanigans that is the Nameless Songs trilogy, he and Eleanor drags him off to be an adventurer elsewhere. Um, only less fantasy flavored and more like Indiana Jones flavored, and I want to follow their adventures. So there's that. There's also Cowboy spinoff. What is life like in the west of Eldana, where it's lawless before and after the spoiler alert fall of the current monarchy. There's also I kind of am toying with just like even a short thing about the the three buskers with George and his little band, because that would be hilarious as hell just to watch them go at it. But that one's less of a thing. It's really more like I just want to write Western fantasy at some point with dragons. That would be cool. Anyway, where was I? The rain fell hard onto Mick at that point, pulling around his claws. He cowered behind the dragon as it swung its head back into him and fixed its back to him and fixed its turquoise eyes on his. And fixed his turquoise eyes onto his. Its lips curled back, revealing just a hint of slick fang, and its jaws clacked in a series of hisses and growls. Something clicked in Mick's brain. He could understand these growls. It was a language some part of him knew, some part perked up at hearing. He could feel the lumina within him shift and lap eagerly in his chest. Cryptic says one of these days I'll actually commit to my ideas of hospital and cops drama style stuff in fantasy universes. I wholeheartedly recommend that you do. But those words, what do you think you're doing revealing yourself? Do you want to die? The dragon hissed. And then it stopped, and Mick felt its gaze sears flesh. Wait, I've seen every dragon in the Fireflight. And the Flame Clan. But you, it narrowed its eyes. It took a step closer. Who are you? Mick's jaws opened and closed. He didn't know how to answer that. Not just literally, but physically. His voice rolled around uselessly in his throat like a marble in a cup. His jaws simply refused to shape it into anything meaningful. The water dragon lifted its head and strode forward, fins flared, eyes burning with sapphire lumina. I said, it growled, who are you? Inside him, his lumina stirred as if in answer. It filled him, pushed against his body, demanded his voice, but he swallowed and backed away. His head filled with music, and he could feel his flames filling his mouth. He could feel flames filling his mouth. No, no, please, no. He clamped his jaws together and tried to hold his magic back, but the music grew louder and louder as the dragon stepped closer. And then a beam of light landed between them and struck a wall to their right with a resounding crack. Oh gods, no. The water dragon curled its lips back and snarled, whipping its head to Lord Albert and his party at the edge of the square. They weren't the only ones either. The adventurers had regrouped and surrounded them in their distraction, and soon the sky was full of arrows and a tornado of water exploded. A tornado of water exploded from the ground, and Mick turned to run. Hey, you, where do you think you're going? Mick ignored him. Him? It. The dragon was an it. Worry about that later. All that mattered was running, must get out. Rains of arrows and bullets filled the air. Nope, that is... A tornado of water exploded from the ground, and Mick turned to run. Bits of arrows and bullets filled the air. Some struck his back, sending white-hot pain up his spine. Flying was no option then. Barreling through the crowds? But no, adventurers filled the edges of the court, a colorful fence of raised blades and blazing magic. Nowhere to run. Let me just check real quick, see if there's... There was a note further on back. It's curled around something long and wooden, so that takes care of that note. Mick ran frantic circles around the square looking for an opening, nowhere to run. He clutched at the crowds. They responded by slashing at his flank and driving him back with undulating earth and blasts of wind. Nowhere to run. He stumbled backwards, closer to the water dragon, who was rising into the air again. The rain fell heavier and fat cold torrents across Mick's scales. Nowhere to run. And then there was a flash of gold before him. Mick skidded to a halt, paws scrambling across wet cobblestone. Albert stood before him, a long sword drawn, its blade glowing with sinister light. I have you now, fiend, he shouted. Any last words? Mick took a quivering step back, his throat tight and dry. Nowhere to run. A volley of arrows from surrounding adventurers struck Mick from all sides, sending him onto his belly before Lord Albert, as a painful howl ripped onto his belly as a painful howl ripped from his throat. His head, the music, once a gentle hum before the dragon. Once a gentle hum grew louder until it filled his head. His fire boiled in his stomach, and every part of him vibrated with the effort to contain it. Nowhere to run. Lord Albert lifted his sword to the sky. His light brightened to a blinding glow, then rushed up the blade. Steel and magic sang through the air as Lord Albert brought his sword down, and a sharp curve of light shot from its tip and cut through the space between them. Mick twisted away from it, but the blade cut into the shoulder. He let loose a scream as he fell sideways. He's already down. Driving the arrows, porcupining his body deeper into his flesh. As he rolled onto his side, driving the arrows, porcupining his body deeper into his flesh. Nowhere to run. And he couldn't anyway. Cornered, exhausted, consumed with pain. This was it. He watched Lord Albert stalk forward, readying his blade for another spell. Mick's eyes stung with tears, and he shifted on his bed of cobblestones, craning his neck to ready himself for Lord Albert's final attack. A soft pink light flashed across his vision, and a familiar weight landed on him. There we go. That takes care of oddities of continuity. Soft pink light flashed across his vision, and a familiar weight landed on his back. The smell of jasmine and strawberries and Eleanor filled his nostrils. He opened his eyes to find Lord Albert frozen in his tracks, staring in confusion and anger at Mick. Or not Mick, the space where he was lying. Okay, any more? Okay. He can't see us. No one can, Eleanor whispered. Mick turned his head to see her perched between his wings. One hand held onto her shoulder spike. The other clutched a blood crystal. Are you good to fly? She murmured. With some effort, he nodded. I think so. The music in his head faded to near inaudibility, and the fog of pain slowly cleared. He still felt weak, but when he unfurled his wings, he could feel his strength returning, blazing through his muscles. Eleanor took her hand off that next spike. One hand held onto the spike, the other clutched a blood crystal. Eleanor took her hand off his next spike to pat him gently on the shoulder. Then go, before my glamour wears off. He didn't need to be told again. He flapped his wings and pushed off the ground, bowling Lord Albert over with the wind of his takeoff in the process. With each flap, Mick carried Eleanor higher and higher above the battlefield. Far below, the water dragon unleashed its tsunami to flood the square once more, then lifted its eyes directly to Mick. Wait, it bellowed. He did not. Instead, he twisted in the air and flew hard towards the first horizon he saw. Unleashed its tsunami to flood the squares, consuming the remaining flowers, then lifted his head. He did not. Instead, he twisted in the air and flew hard towards the first horizon he saw. There we go. It's a little bit rough, but I think that works. There are still a few things that I might go back and add to this scene, but overall, at least it's edited. Let's see. Our goal today is to break underneath. Well, obviously we can't break underneath 90,000. Let me just see. 4201. I mean, we're getting there. Let's see. These two together. With all those cuts, we're underneath 167 at the very least. But slowly but surely, and everything underneath that little yellow folder down below is going to be cut anyway. But yeah, we're just 2 more chapters away from the revision bits, which means that I should be able to finish up the remaining edits for everything up to the chapters that are going to be rewritten by the start of November. Which means that starting in November, just in time for Nano, we'll be switching from me reading bits of story to you to largely silent streams, except for the music in the background. There will be also writing sprints, which means if you don't know what a writing sprint is or haven't attended one before, think of it like this: the stream will be broken up into low periods where let's say 20-30 minute periods where our goal is to write or edit as much as possible within that time frame. And at the very end of the time, I'll call it, and you basically share how much work that you've gotten done. Technically, it's kind of like in some flavors of it, it's like a little competition to see if you can write or edit the most amount of words in a single time frame. But we're going to be chill. We're playing by chill rules, which is basically, you know, we share progress with each other and cheer each other on, encourage each other, and celebrate the progress that we've already made. So we'll be doing a lot of that. We'll sit down, do a sprint, share our work, talk about it a little bit, then launch into another one, essentially. And we'll keep on doing that every single time this streams. In terms of the schedule, we are back on Thursdays and Fridays, for sure. Next Tuesday is probably going to be D&D night, so I will probably not be around. And it's going to be a busy week in general. I have a work thing on Saturday, so no stream then, which means that Sunday is also going to be a no stream day because I'm going to be resting. However, tomorrow is going to be a stream day. Tomorrow we'll be launching into Chapter 12. And I do believe that is also a relatively short chapter. Oh no, never mind. That is not a fucking short chapter. We will be reading one of those scenes. So yeah, we'll launch into that. So feel free to drop in tomorrow night as well. It starts at 8, runs until whenever the formal time is supposed to be 9, but obviously, like this stream, like every stream that we've had, we might go over. The next week, same deal, Thursday and Friday, 8 to whenever. And and then we'll talk about November and all the shenanigans that will ensue. In the meantime, that is about it for this stream. Thank you for coming. I hope that, you had fun watching me ramble about Kingdom Hearts, Madoka Magica, world building, and the Nameless Song and whatnot. Lily Lockwood says, I've got Pathfinder on Friday, so I won't be able to drop in, but I'll plan on being here next Thursday. That is totally a-okay and completely valid. Pathfinder is a fantastic game, and I fully hope that tomorrow's session will be fantastic for you. But yeah, I guess before we go, if anybody would like to drop in what progress they've made these past couple of hours, so that we can cheer you on, that would be awesome. If you guys were just chilling and listening to me do things, that is a-okay too. I'm just kind of curious. But other than that, it's like, other than that, not to repeat myself, Thursday, Friday, 8 o'clock to whenever, for sure, for the next, tomorrow and next week. Week after, we might add in a Tuesday session if I feel up for it. If not, otherwise, we shall see. Uh, Same thing with weekend sessions as well. It's a whole we shall see situation. Cryptic says only progress I've made is new motivation for fantasy-based cheesy drama plots. LOL. That's valid. And Lonely Lockwood says got about 400 words on the short story. Also excellent. Congratulations on those 400 words, and may there be more. And may the pathway to the ending of a short story be smooth and come to you very easily and quickly. Um, and to Cryptic, may definitely rooting for short fantasy cheese. I am looking forward to hearing more about that. Pause on the keyboard says I accidentally ended up drawing something else. LOL. Also valid. Totally valid. At least you know you're productive and their drawing happened. That is the thing, you know. So long as you do, like not don't like I wouldn't advocate doing until you run yourself into the ground, obviously, but like part of creativity is that you keep up with it and you exercise it like a muscle. So like planning on a story, working on a story, doing intending on doing one story but ending up doing something completely different or art or whatever, at least you're still, you know, putting some effort towards, I don't know, like towards getting or towards shaping your creative talent. Just keep on moving. Highly recommend that. And otherwise, on that note, I hope that you all enjoyed the stream, and I thank you again for coming here with me and being productive with me. It's always a pleasure to body double with y'all and to chat with y'all and just in general have fun being productive and doing creative things. So I hope that you'll come back with me, whether it's tomorrow or next week or what have you, whenever works for you. You are always welcome in the chat, and you know, I always appreciate the chatting. So with that all said, wrapping this up here. Thank you again for coming, and hope to see you all tomorrow. Take care, sweet dreams. Have a good night.